Greetings. I am Tom Earl. I know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you are here today sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy, it means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment you are valued, you are loved, and you are appreciated just as you are. My friends, I have a new series for you. This is called the Listening Deeper or the Re-Listen series. You can call it either one. I know I am. Now, you may have heard this intro before. We are using the same intro for this series. So have no fear if you're listening to this again and thinking, oh, I've heard this episode before. Don't worry. Same great intro. Absolutely amazing new podcast. So feel free to hit the skip 30 seconds if you've heard this before. But if this is your first time hearing this, welcome, my friends. What we are presenting to you over these next episodes is really some deeper listenings or some re-listens to some of our most requested, some of our most listened to, some of my favorite episodes that we've done. Now, we have put out over 300 episodes since this has started. That means all the way back to 2016, I've put out one episode a week, every single week without fail since 2016. That means there's a lot of really awesome interviews, solo episodes. There's some really great things in there that you probably haven't heard if you're just joining us, or even if you're a longtime listener. So what I want to do is pull together a number of my favorite ones and your favorite ones that you have listened to or that have been listened to before you. And I want you to either hear them fresh for the first time or give them a re-listen yourself. I'm telling you, I have re-listened to each of these and really just thinking about where I was in my life then, or the wisdom from then that applies to now, because some of these are going to be from 2016. Some are going to be from last year. Some of them are going to be, weeks before everything that went down in 2020. So I want to share these with you as a gift going into the time vault of our episodes. And really, I invite you to go through these with new ears, with new hearts, because we are new people here in this moment. Now, I invite you to let me know if you listen to it, what year do you think this week's episode was from? And I'd love to hear your thoughts. My friends, I look forward to sharing this Listening Deeper as we re-listen series with you. Let us jump into this week's re-listen. Here we go. As you can see, I am not alone. I have an amazing, brilliant guest. She goes by the name of Khalisa Rae. What's going on, Khalisa Rae? How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
Man, I told you before we started, y'all, we got a poet here, journalist, award-winning, high in demand, all over the place. Took the time to bless us with her brilliance. So I'm in this place of, gratitude, all these things. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you mind, for the very few people out there who don't already know who you are, can I introduce them to you via your bio?
Yeah, sure.
All right. I'm known in some corners of the world as just an excellent bio reader. So let's see if I can live up to the hype. Khalisa Rae is an award-winning poet and journalist in Durham, North Carolina, that speaks with furious rebellion. She is the author of Ghost in a Black Girl's Throat, published by Hen Press 2021. Come on, Tom, what are you doing here? Her essays are featured in Autostraddle, Catapult, and NBC-BLK, and others. Her poetry appears in Frontier Poetry, Rust and Moth, PANK, HOBART, among countless others. Currently, she serves as assistant editor for Glass Poetry and co-founder of Think in Ink and the Women of Color Speak reading series. Her second collection, Unlearning Eden, is forthcoming from White Stag Publishing in 2022. She is also a writing instructor at Catapult magazine. Find her there for breakthrough writing classes. And of course, we will plug at the end everywhere that you can follow Khalisa. Khalisa, that was awesome.
Thank you.
What's it like absorbing it all? Like, yep, that's me.
It's kind of actually surreal because reading you, like hearing you read, I was like, you know what? I am so much more than that. Actually, that's the first thing that came to mind. I was like, you know what? My day to day, I do so many like more things, I was kind of marveled at how much I'm able to like pack into a year or a day, because there's so much like in between the lines that doesn't get told in your bio. So yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's so awesome you say that, because our first question always is, you're more than your bio. So you stole my punchline. You're more than your bio. I agree. I co-sign that. So for folks, here's your first prompt, right? Outside of the bio. If you really knew me, you'd know that.
If you really knew me, you'd know that it's funny. I'm a transplant to North Carolina. So I'm a big city girl that lives in a little city in North Carolina that loves community and loves art and loves communing with other artists and giving back. And my like dream would be to like live on a farm somewhere. That's so funny to say because I was born outside Chicago, but I've been like morphed into this like Southern girl who just wants to like be in a corner creating and like sometimes being with my community. But if I could be with animals on a farm, like doing creation and working with my hands all day with my husband and my family, I'd be a happy soul. That and like writing, continuing to write for fashion magazines all day and getting wonderful clothes would just be like a dream. So yeah.
I am so relating to this right now. I want to move to a farm too.
Really?
I mean, I don't want the farm, but I want to move to, I'm from a small town where, you know, there's nobody around for miles. And I miss that so much. I'm with you.
That.
We'll start a little poetry town where we all just have our own land and get together every once in a while and do poems. I like this vision. So did you, when you were growing up, know, you know, one day I want to be an award-winning poet and journalist and to help people unlock their creativity through my writing workshops? Was that what you were growing up envisioning?
No, I've known my whole life that I've wanted to be an artist and create. I share this story with people that's kind of funny. So my mom must have known that I was going to be something because she used to take us and have us listen to Disney movies and we'd learn 3-part harmony, me, my brother, and my sister. And my mom would teach us like an orchestra. And she said that I used to, at 4 years old, stand in front of everybody and like put my hands on my hips. And you know, all of those videos you see of like Whitney, Beyonce, Britney Spears, when they were really little singing, that's how I was. I had this booming personality and this booming voice at 4. There's videos of me just like belting these notes out to, you know, Little Mermaid and Aladdin. So my mom must have known that I wanted to be on stage and be a performer. So that's really the trajectory that I took up until my like 3rd year of college. I went full-fledged with musical theater and with acting, but I was writing the whole time. That's kind of how I found slam poetry because it meshed my love of performance and writing. But my whole life I've been, you know, in musical theater and musical academies and studying acting and singing and dancing, but I've been writing and writing has always been the constant. But I never knew the impact. I think slam was like the little tip of the iceberg. I saw the potential that slam poetry had to change people's minds and lives. And so that's when I really knew I wanted to do it full time. So, yeah.
Well, we're going to start off deep right away. I got a little teary-eyed question and I can feel the tears in my eyes. Let's see if I can talk about it without getting choked up. You know, when you were sharing that you were like as a 4-year-old, your mom saw this light. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like now having a daughter and I see that light, my like just concern is like, I don't want anyone to take that away while knowing that society is set up to try to take that away from her.
Yeah.
How do you honor that gift you have and not let society, people dim it or take it away? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. You know, much of my book talks about the light being stripped. And that makes me emotional too. You know, it makes me sad to think about how I was such a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed kid in Gary, Indiana that thought the world was my oyster. And then smack dab, you know, I go to, and not that things weren't rough, you know, like I was one of the only Black girls in my middle school. My mom sent me to private school. So I never actually went to school in the like impoverished area that I lived, my mom was like the Gilmore Girls mom. She was like, yo, I see this light, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to shield you for as long as I can. I'm going to send you to private school. And while she thought she was helping me, that actually gave me a rude awakening that the light will quickly be robbed. But I still had like a naivete to me. So I went off, to high school and to college thinking that things were going to be awesome. And then, we get my book, which is all about the Wilmington 1898 race massacre in Wilmington, North Carolina, and learning about that, and the light literally being like stripped from me, and me getting like a smack dab of like culture shock of, whoa, this is horrific. And why was I not taught this as a kid? And so I think that ironically, that light dimming was almost like a necessary evil. Like, I don't believe anything was by chance. I think that I was meant to like survive having to come back, as you say, from like having that veil being lifted from your eyes and you kind of like being diminished in a way made me who I am today, and makes me a vessel to talk about triumph and victory. And so that's kind of how I look at, my life. I choose to look at it like, yeah, I learned about the history of violence and racism when I came to the South. And what I did was I used that to make myself a vehicle to like be a change agent, and to speak up about injustices. And so I think that's all you can do. Like, I want that for my daughter. I don't want her to have to go through those things, but I'm going to teach her they're inevitable. So I want her to be a fighter and be a change agent. Yeah.
Oh man, I really appreciate you going there with us.
Of course.
It brings up for me, I was hearing Brene Brown talk about this, the difference between trauma and challenges in life. No one should have to go through trauma, but she was saying, challenges and struggle and even pain outside of trauma is like good for us, that it allows us to become this bigger version of ourselves. Is that a little bit of what I'm hearing kind of you say?
Yeah, I think you're also hearing me because I'm a person of faith too. So I think that that's what you're hearing. I think you're hearing me because I struggle with a lot of like mental health. And I was just talking to a Black friend of mine who is a creator. She's a musician that's like rising the charts right now, but she like started with me and now she's getting her fame. We were talking about being a Black woman living at many intersections. It's hard to be. And sometimes you have to make a choice to look at life like, I'm trauma filled. I've got mental health. I'm a survivor of abuse. I've, got all these different problems. The world is really messed up right now. How do I make it? How do I keep pushing? And we were talking about being people of faith. Sometimes the only thing that gets you through is looking at life like I just said it. I was meant to be a spokesperson and a leader and a change agent and a generational curse breaker. And I believe that. And so I think us as creators, we all are, like, we all have that power. I think we're creators. And so I think that you can't survive as a Black woman in America or a Black queer person or anybody who lives at many intersections, I think, without leaning into that and leaning into, what, I'm going to choose to look at what happened to me as like just something else that I can use to help somebody else not make the same mistakes I did, but also to empower somebody else. So that's the way I choose to look at life, because if I didn't, I think that I would be in a depressive hole all day. I was talking to her about that. We were like, we have to view life in that way. Otherwise, we literally would not want to wake up, and keep pushing. And so I think that that's what you hear, somebody that's coming on the other side of really dealing with a lot of struggles about being here in this crazy messed up world we live in. And so, yeah, I'm choosing to choose life and to choose hope. Yeah.
Whew, it's emotional for you, bringing up so many things for me. Maybe I'm just sensitive today. Or I loved when you said generational curse breaker. And it made me feel almost like, and tell me if I'm just you're way off base, Tom. Almost like it's such a gift, I think, to those who came before us to say, I have broken this curse, because everybody before us wanted to and was like trying to get us there, and now we finally did. What does that phrase bring up for you? It seemed like a very intentional choice.
It is an intentional choice because, my book is all about that. It's all about how, when I talk about ghosts, I'm also talking about the matriarchs. I'm not just talking about the ghost of, the many folks of color that were slain because of the coup d'etat that happened at the hands of white supremacy. Like, I'm not just talking about that. I'm also talking about ghosts in a healing way. I had to call upon my ancestors because I am in this illustrious, rich legacy of people that have come before me, folks that are not even my blood, that have fought and grinded to make this world a better place for me. And so I think, you're absolutely right that I've had to lean into that and say, my blood ancestors and those that are not my blood fought to break curses, to stop centuries of violence, both in like family and just in society. They fought. And so I am continuing a legacy. I was telling you about how I've been so moved by the show High on the Hog, because it talks a lot about history and legacy, and especially the legacy of the South. And I think it's so important to like know where you came from. I found out that even though I have no family here in the South, all my ancestors in my family originated here. And so I think that knowing that makes me want to continue to be a curse breaker, because I know what they started and I know what I need to continue. And so it just, like I said, it keeps me pushing. It gives me a reason for waking up and keeping pushing. So, yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, how did you construct the faith, the worldview, the inner philosophy that you were talking about earlier, that I need to have this to survive, to thrive? What was that process like? Because I'm imagining it was a very intentional process.
Yeah, many things. I think that I've gotten here. One, I want to just like advocate right now for everybody: therapy. If you don't have a good therapist, get one. So I think that therapy and healing, right? So a friend of mine here, she's a creator too. She's a dancer. And she also talks about how being a Black woman at many intersections is living daily with like multiple forms of trauma. And so if you don't have some type of like healing set in place, you're fractured at all times. And so I think that healing is the thing that keeps me whole. Therapy is the thing that keeps me whole. And it gives me that worldview. I will also say that I've been super blessed to have like amazing mentors. I've had some of the like just most phenomenal folks in the game right now. Some authors that we know and love randomly will just show up for me and reach out to me. And I don't know what I did to deserve that. But I've just been blessed to have these amazing mentors, both in the slam world, the literary world, the art world. And so they have really helped me see that. And then I'll be honest, having the mother that I did, and also her introducing me to these like powerhouse writers as we talk about our ancestors, Toni Morrison, and thinking about Gwendolyn Brooks and Lucille Clifton, and thinking about the way they viewed the world. If you ever hear Toni talk or Maya talk, they are so powerful when they speak. If you just like look, like, I don't know if you've seen that video of Toni being asked, like, why do you write like only Black stories? And she's like, why not? Like, who else would I be writing for? I'm writing for my people. I'm not writing for the white gaze. That type of way of looking at life makes me emboldened to keep like thinking of the world in this way, that like, it's my oyster and I deserve to be here. So yeah.
I appreciate that. And I remember seeing an interview with Steve McQueen, him echoing that same sentiment that Toni shared as well. So I'm curious kind of your answer to this prompt. This comes from Abby Wambach's book, her leadership book. So she shares kind of like, this is an old rule of her specific thing is leadership that I used to believe. Here's a new rule. So I'm curious, it's kind of going through this kind of spiritual journey of creating this intentional philosophy, this intentional worldview. What kind of for you would you say, like, this is something I used to believe, this was an old rule and I have since shed that because it doesn't serve me, and instead here's a new rule?
That's such a good question. I would say I used to live, you know, what's interesting is the story that I was sharing with you about just like all the things that I learned when I was going through maturation. And there was a moment when I was at one college in North Carolina and literally, I have a poem about this that won the Bright Wings poetry competition. I wrote about how one day I was in class in Wilmington and just like felt something say like, you need to like leave this city. If you don't, you're like not gonna live much longer, like mentally, physically, spiritually, like you need to go. It was like, run. And as luck would have it, my professor claimed that like I had an F paper when it wasn't. She had claimed that I had like cheated and like changed my grade, and I had to like contest that and go to like college court. And I actually decided that it wasn't worth it anymore, that like I need to start putting me first, because if I don't, I won't live a thriving life, but also I won't live a life of abundance and joy. And so that's the old mentality that I had was very like shame centered, like, oh, putting me first is being selfish and I just need to be a good girl and listen to what people say and they're in control and I'm not. And a lot of that was very trauma centered. And then I literally that night told my friend, I have to get out of here. Will you help me pack up my stuff? We need to move. And I moved to another city and just like by the grace of the universe got into a college, another school on a whim, which completely changed my life. But that was my new mentality. My new mentality was the person that I listened to, this amazing podcast, always says, you first and them second when it comes to your joy and your abundance. And so that is the new mentality that I had to have. Because I literally in Wilmington, like we talk about the ghost, I felt like I was dying there. The racism, the bigotry, the sexism was so heavy, I could not survive. And so that new mentality ushered me into this like new phase of life. So yeah.
Thank you again for sharing that with us. We really appreciate that. Before we dive into this next segment, just want to co-sign the power of therapy as well. Since you shared that, I've since connected with a new therapist. She's amazing. So I just want to co-sign that for sure. You have shared a couple of times about your book, about your poetry. Folks are right now like, Tom, when are you going to ask? So let's ask, would you be willing to share with us one of your poems?
Sure, of course. So this is Ghost in a Black Girl's Throat, my debut full-length collection. So excited to share work from that. We can, you know what? We can keep on a similar theme. I'm going to perform livestock for you. Tom, do you want me to read one piece or two?
Is whatever's moving you, whatever you're feeling.
Awesome. We're going to kick it off with livestock. When they come for me, I am neither girl nor boy. I am neither clam nor cock. I have neither hooves nor snout, but I do have claws. I can grunt and growl and show my teeth. I do not need wings to create a windstorm. I do not need talons to break skin. I can snarl and scrape. I can unhinge my jaw to fit a head twice the size of mine inside. I can be razor-backed and spiked edge when he tries to skin me, unscale my silvery back, debone my brazen hen hide. I will be foul-mouthed and crooked-necked. I will will be the chicken head they knew me to be if it will save my life. When he comes for me, I will remember the coup, how they gathered the foul girl up by the feet with warm hands and cooing, how her brown hung low when they entered her into the guillotine and severed her head, how they plucked her body until it was bare. I will remember the blood and what happens when they want to make you food, girl.
Yes. Did you want to do one or two?
I can do another one. I'll end on a lighter note. I love that piece. It talks about my fighter spirit. But I'm gonna just do this final piece actually about another subject that we just talked about. I wrote this for Raven Simone. I was told that I looked like her my whole life. So I wrote this piece because I heard, I don't know, Tom, if you saw her interview with Oprah when she talked about how she wasn't Black or like African American. She didn't identify with that. And that really just was very unsettling for me. So I wrote this poem to her. It's called American Made. You undress your skin so easily, as if this ethnicity were a hoodie on a hot day and you thought it best to simply take off before recognized or assumed. When the weight of your identity becomes a burden, you refuse to carry it on this journey as a brown woman. But who are we kidding? We were both the light-skinned girl everyone in school asked, what you mixed with? We were both on the playground when Billy Sanford pulled our hair and said we talk white. Both the only Black girl on the cheerleading team and weren't invited to the team sleepover. We got a rude awakening when our teacher changed our A paper to an F, but we stay trying to remove all this dead weight and tool, all these centuries of Ghanaian beating and Cape Town stitch work like we don't know where we were made. We stay climbing inside someone else's silhouette, trying to obliere, unzip this Montclair passing skin. But I will always be the Black ball gown in a room full of white wedding dresses. And I am reminded every day against this taffeta backdrop of muted hues and random fabrics, equality turns into invisibility the longer you exist. Saying I don't see color means I don't see you. You have made sameness another word for silent erasure. And I do not want you silent, girl. Not when there is still so much to say. Thank you.
Have you got a chance to perform that one live?
Yeah, on my book tour, I've performed that quite a bit.
What people in the audience?
Oh, you mean like live in person? No, because it stinks that my book released during COVID. And so I've only done 2 performances as like at a slam venue. And I don't think I did that piece. But live as in like, a virtual audience. Yeah.
Cause I can just hear the parts where people are like, oh, when you say, what was the line? When you say I'm colorblind, it means I don't see you. Is that,
Yeah. Yeah.
What does it feel like to write? Let's talk about the first one. What did it feel like to write that poem?
Safia, you know her. Safia Helio has this line in her book, and Fatima Asghar has a line and a part of the title that has that first phrase in my poem, when they come for me or when they come for us. I think that's the title of Fatima Asghar's book. And so I was inspired by her title. And I was just, I don't know if you could tell when I was spitting it, but I was like, really in just like embodying all of the fighters that I know that are like, listen, if somebody tries to try me and I'm in that like trauma-filled situation again, I'm coming for necks, I'm coming for heads, I'm clawing, I'm scraping. And so I was so like geared up and amped up when I was writing that poem, which is why it sounds kind of gruesome a little bit, but I love it. I love to like, I was tapping into, that fighter spirit within me. I love it. I just felt so empowered and emboldened when I was writing that piece.
Who comes to mind, or what do you channel, or what inspires you, or what is like your vision board of the fighter spirit, if you will?
My vision board. Okay. So first I always say when my mom, like first, she didn't say much, but she used to talk to me about, like when you talk to your daughter about preparing them to go off to like college, I have a piece about that. She always used to say like, girl, if you don't scrape and crawl, if somebody tries to get you, you're going to scrape and gnaw. So like I see my mom and like a video of her like giving me the talk before I went off to college. And then, who I also see, this is interesting, but I see Angela Bassett. I don't know if you've like seen her movies, but she's such a, like at 50 something, she's got like rock hard, like muscles. She could go toe to toe with anybody who tries her. Like she could knock someone out. So I like see like this powerful Black actress, like Angela Bassett. They're just like, kicking butt and taking names. Who is that woman with the afro that's played in like all of the like spy movies back in the day, the like 70s? I forget her name, but I see her there too. She was like the Black 70s version of like The Spy Who Shagged Me, like that kind of and so I see her picture there with like her all leather like shaft. That's like, I know that's so random.
It doesn't matter if it's random, it's awesome. It's intentional for you.
Yeah. That's what I see. Women that kick butt and just like don't take any prisoners. Yeah.
This is fun. This is a fun exercise. What about when you're reading it? What is it like for you when you're reading it?
When I'm reading it, to be honest, it's interesting because there's a different feeling. I go back, I'm a survivor. On a more serious note, I'm a survivor of a lot of like violence and abuse. And so I think for me, I channel like an alternate reality. And I try to imagine having a voice to say no and speak up and tap into that fighter spirit when I was in many situations that didn't feel safe. So that's what I do. I tap into that. And then I imagine talking to my daughter too, about that fighter spirit and about using her voice and using the power inside of her, because we're unstoppable as women. And so that's what I just like tap into, that like unstoppable spirit. But also I try to just imagine the like what ifs. And that just makes me, that's a healing thing to do. It's healing to think about like, like being in a scenario when you didn't feel safe and then tapping into like, well, what if I had the voice, now that I do, I can help somebody else to find their fighter spirit. So yeah, that's what I tap into.
I'm also a survivor as well. So that's where it took me when I was listening. So when you shared that's why I was curious, because where the energy you're writing it from, I hear now, but at first it took me to the place that you were talking about, the what if. So that was helpful to hear. Question for you, almost feels like a risky question. So let's pause on it if we need to.
Okay.
How do you create the what if while also not like blaming ourselves? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. You know what's interesting? That's a really good question because I was hesitant to say that's what I do, because I don't want to, for the many survivors out there, I don't want to mistake the two. But I think that what I'm talking about is something completely different than blaming myself as the victim and survivor. What I'm talking about is in therapy, my therapist has me do visualizations. And one of the visualizations, this is actually something very vulnerable that I'm going to share with y'all. One of the visualizations is we tap into my fighter spirit. And so do you know that the thing that gets me through trauma triggers is actually, she wants me to visualize, for people that are in therapy or trauma therapy, you go to like a place where you can contain the thing that terrifies you. Well, in my containing space, the space that feels the most safe is warriors. So down in my little container space, I have Thor, I have Valkyrie, and I have this gang of warriors. I lie to you not, like this is what we do during trauma therapy. And so that's what helps me. And I visualize being back in that situation, having this team of warriors behind me. So it has nothing to do with blaming myself or blaming victims. It has everything to do with reframing and reimagining history in my head, so that, because that's what trauma therapy is all about. You have to reframe your connection to that trigger. Otherwise, you will live your whole life being triggered by the things that remind you of the thing that was unsafe. And so for me, that's just me personally, my own personal journey. I find power in knowing that next time I can fight back, that I am in control. And that makes me so courageous and emboldened to know that, like, next time I can, and that I have a whole team of armies with me, fighting with me. And you can take that spiritually, you can take that literally, you can take that however you want to take it. But I have a team of people that are ride or die for me. And I can fight back and I can speak up. And so that's what it is for me. Yeah.
That is so awesome, and such a gift that you're giving us, going there with us. Because I think for a lot of us, it's very healing to hear that and to go through that. I'm on week 2 of trauma therapy, so you're kind of
really
in telling me the pathway that's to come.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the book The Alter Ego Effect?
I haven't.
It's very similar to what you're talking about. It's a person who works with athletes like Serena Williams and other badasses who have trauma come up, and it's kind of getting in the way of them performing. And he's a survivor of abuse as well. And so it's exactly what he talks about, creating an alter ego that you tap into in those moments where you feel the trigger, the shame. So I'm like totally resonating with what you're saying.
Absolutely. That's amazing.
Okay, let's talk about the second one. What was like writing the second one?
Oh my goodness. It was, for me at first, I'm gonna tell you, I was mad as hell, because I was like, listen, little girl, you just had this wonderful platform to talk to Oprah and to say whatever you wanted to say, and you dropped the ball. And not only that, you detached and disassociated from your people. So at first I was angry when I was writing. I was like, I'm so mad at her that I write this poem. And this poem has had like 5 different versions of it, because I was so angry. I couldn't figure out like what was the best way to tell her the message and talk to her. And then my professor told me, talk to her like you were talking to a sister. And that changed the complete tone of the piece when I spoke to her like she was. That's why I changed it to we. If you notice, everything I say doesn't blame her. It's about the we, that we share similarities because we are fair-skinned girls. And if you think about the history of being a Black person in America, colorism, we got so many more afforded opportunities to just pass through life without feeling the sting of racism. And so I wanted to talk to her about like, yo, girl, no, don't do that. Like, we can't. We have a duty and an honor, as we said, like our ancestors fought too hard for you to act like you're not a Black woman in America. So yeah, I was mad at first, but then I saw community with her, that I saw, I know what it feels like, and I know what it feels like when you're the only Black girl in school. And it's easy to be like, to hold your head down and be like, I'm not who I am. And I just want to deny my ancestral legacy and my heritage and my race. It's easy to do that. But I wanted, at the end of the poem, my goal was to say, I see you, but no, we've got to do better. Like, I feel you, I see you, but we got to, because me and her have the same, nationality. We're both Creole, African-American. So we have family in Louisiana. Our people come from Africa and from France. And so I share a camaraderie with her. And so I wanted to tell her that I see her. So yeah.
Yeah, that was I felt the tone shift. And by the end, like if I had to give like one word to describe, I heard like empathy. It felt, I understand where you're coming from. And then I would say the second word I heard would be like accountability. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely.
What's it then? Same question. What's it like when you're reading it? What are the feelings that come up for you while you're reading it?
When I'm reading it, I'm talking to her like she's my homegirl. For me, it's like we're friends. Yeah, I met her. And so, like I said, I used to want to be an actress. This is a story for another day, but I had the honor and the privilege of spending time in LA for a long time. And I actually met her and I met the whole cast of her show. And so I visualized that like we were homegirls sitting around with some wine, kicking it. And I was like, I was saying this to her, like, yeah, I get it. I was there too on the playground. They made fun of us, called us, Oreo, all these names that they made for Black girls back then. But no, girl, like that's what I feel when I'm reading it. And there is that shift where I am like, okay, I got a little bit of 2 cents to tell you. So maybe one day people have said like, do you think that she's heard it because you've performed it at so many places? I'm imagining when I read it that one day, like she'll hear it. So yeah.
And then what do you imagine happens?
That she asks questions. I want her to ask questions, to like to seek out more, information. I want her to think. I want her to think how what she did affected me and like millions of other girls, young Black girls that heard that. Cause I'm not the only one. Like I looked at the comments, to her interview. There were thousands, millions of people that were like really upset about it. But I want her to ask questions and to think and to hopefully change, her mindset. She may have, I will say, you never know who may have had this similar comment to her because I saw her on the Disney Channel and she now identifies as a Black queer woman. So she's shifted. So you never know. Maybe words do, have affected her because, yeah.
So we've gotten to hear 2 poems now from the book, amazing poems. Let's get to hear a little bit about if you're able to share kind of the origin story of the book. What can you kind of give us of the background story, the behind the scenes, if you will?
Oh my goodness. I'm actually really excited to share this because my origin story of my book is actually really cool. So I am a, young budding writing student at Queen's University in Charlotte, North Carolina. And who do I see when I walk into orientation? None other than the notable, the illustrious, the world-renowned Claudia Rankine. And I see Ada Limon there. And okay, so I'm not gonna lie. I had already seen Ada's name on the little brochure when you get accepted into your master's program. So like I cheated. I knew that like Ada was gonna be there, but I did not know Claudia Rankine was gonna be there. So I see her and I like almost faint and all my cohorts are like, oh my gosh, you didn't know? So we start on fast forward to my senior year. We start on our thesis project and they ask, what is it like, if you could write one book, no other publications, just this one book, what would you want it to be about? And of course, I wanted to talk about the most impactful incident that has ever happened to me, which is moving to the wild South and having a culture shock as a Chicago girl, trying to figure out what the heck is going on in this small podunk Southern town. And why does it feel like we're back in the 1900s? And so when you go to the town, people say that there's something eerie. They always talk about it being haunted. And in class, it clicked for me. That's what I need to write about. Now, of course, the title didn't come till later. We were talking about Safia Ohilio, and I had the honor and privilege of being her student, actually, many years later. And that's where the title came from. But the book originated in class with Claudia Rankine and Ada Limon. They were my professors. I am the luckiest poet, I say, because I got to study under them and they helped me craft this book. So again, I said to myself, if I don't write another poem, you're going to get all of the poems about my experience as a Black woman, not only being hit over the head by racism, but with sexism and bigotry and feeling alone and me having to call upon the matriarchs. But also I got to the city and it wasn't until I was an adult did I learn that I had past trauma. I had this thing where I was an adult and then I learned that I was a survivor. I had repressed all of those memories. So it's kind of really cool to think about. They gave me permission. They gave me the freedom to write this book by pushing me to say, if nobody else hears your words, what do you want to leave with them? And that's how this was crafted. So yeah.
For the few folks out there who don't know the geniuses you're name dropping, what do you want to share with them?
So Claudia, many of you will know her books. Her book is, the award-winning Citizen that people say is the guidebook to the Black Lives Matter movement. Many people call it that. They say that it's what originated a lot of the studying of the history of racism and activism in America. It's called Citizen. And then she has a new book that's all about racism in America. They're poems and stories, and it's called, I think, Last of Us. I forget the full title. You can give it to people when you post about the interview, Tom, but she's got that second book that talks all about that as well. And so Claudia is the author and a spokesperson and professor that just goes around using her poetry and her stories to combat racism. And so she's phenomenal. And then Ada is another award-winning, National Book Award-winning author and poet. But she just so happens to teach in North Carolina sometimes. So
when was it that you started that poem?
When did I start my program, or when did I start the book?
That poem that you said became the book, right? Is that how I understood it? The thesis?
No. Okay. So no, it's interesting. For your master's thesis, you are constantly just like writing tons of poems. So there wasn't just like one piece. The ironic thing is the title came after the book. The title poem and the title came after I was done with my master's program. So the majority of the poems in this book came from like me just like churning out poems in my class. I was just like writing a ton of poems in my class. Yeah.
Okay, so you were writing a bunch in the master's class, and then a little bit later it was like, oh, this is it. And that kind of synergized it all together.
Yes, exactly. So I took a class with just another phenomenal poet, Safia Helio. And I was in New York in her class. And you know what? This is a cool story. She told us to go to the library at the Poet's House, find, a random book, choose 7 words from that book. Guess what the 7 words were? It was ghost. It was like mouth or throat. It was girl. It was, all the words that I needed to craft the title of the book. And that's where I got the title poem and the title of my whole collection. So, yeah. Yeah.
That is spiritual as hell. I mean, you see that in movies of like ancestors and ghosts communicating through books. And that is like, how about this book? How about these words? The title of your book. I mean, am I reading this wrong, or is this kind of like what you're saying?
No, it was all ordained. It was all seriously. It was all fate. It was all destined. It was all ordained. Because what are the odds? What are the odds that I would randomly be accepted into this residency in New York, right? With this famous poet that I've like followed my whole life. I just so happened to get accepted into her class. She just so happens to write a prompt that says, go find something random. It just so happens that the words that I found gave me the title Ghost in a Black Girl's Throat. Like, what are the odds that there's no coincidence. There is no coincidence. So, yeah.
What does it feel like knowing that you had such a direct communication from God, from those who are on this journey with you? What does that feel like? Just kind of sitting there and talking about it, thinking about it, naming it.
It just makes me feel like I'm built for something bigger, that it's not about me. There's so much higher. The power of words is so much higher than just like us as people. Like I think a lot of us as creators kind of look it up on a service level, like, yes, I'm creating and I'm getting out to the world and I'm publishing and I'm like me. It doesn't have, I really don't think the reason why we're giving these gifts has anything to do with us. It's so much bigger than us. The purpose of this gift is like for me, I think that it's world changing. Us as poets and artists and writers have like world changing abilities. And so I think that's what it is for me. There has to be a reason why all of those things that seem spooky and scary, there has to be a reason why they came together. Because even the way that my book got published, I was randomly at a conference at AWP and this dude says, hey, come here to my table. He's like, what are you working on? I tell him who my professors were. He was like, send me your book. And I don't even know this dude. And I wait 6 months and I call him. I'm like, hey, you told me to send me my book. And he was like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, 2 big publishers want your book. I'm an acquisitioner. And I was like, what? Like, what? So like, I'm just testifying right now at this point. I'll tell you, I could throw something because these are all testimonies of like, you know, yeah.
For those who are like, I want to tap into whatever spiritual power that you are manifesting and bringing to life, what are your thoughts? How do people tap into that?
I don't really think it has anything to do with me per se, but I would say if I had to give it like a formula, I would say being open. Because think about it. Had I said no to going to my master's program after applying 3 times and getting rejected, I got applied 3 times to one of the hardest master's programs to get into for your MFA. They rejected me. And had I given up, right? So being open, being persistent, tenacious. I am a determined as hell person. I will tell you that now. In order to get here, you have to be determined because I hate when people tell me no. So, and then that goes back to like the other things that have lined up in my life too. I've been open. What if I would have looked at this random, white guy that was like, hey, come here. What if I was like, get out of here, white guy? What if I had just like not been open and willing to like be available, offering myself up for that possibility. So I would say like, be open to any possibilities because you never know where your next like breakthrough is going to come from. So, like I would just say be open and then network like heck. Cause I'll tell you, Safia ended up being the editor for my whole book because she was my professor. She didn't know who I was. I saw her in slam and I've seen her win slams and she did not know who I was. And it wasn't until I networked with her did she agree to, be my mentor and edit my book. So those would be the pieces of advice that have taken me a long way.
So what I'm hearing is maybe all of us kind of have that same magic going on, but we need to be open. We need to see it. And then we need to kind of like follow through, have the courage to follow through. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah. Open, available, and the courage to follow through. I love that.
Whew, so many things I'd like to talk about. We're going to have to do a part 2. So let's though, before we leave, talk about what are you working on right now? What are you working on next? What's in the works?
Ooh, I get to tell you guys some secrets. So I'm writing a romance novel. I'm writing a Black women's fiction romance novel. I'm not sure if it's going to be picked up as fiction or a romance, but I'm super excited because I quit my full-time job to do this full-time. So I am dedicated to, I'm querying my novel right now to get an agent I'm very, very dedicated. This book came to me in a dream. I kept dreaming about it over and over and over again to the point where I can tell you like every minutia of this book in my head, like forwards, backwards, start from the middle, like it's weird how I have it all up here. And now I'm like getting it down on paper. So I'm working on my novel. And I'm also working on a lot of collaborative projects with some really, really amazing authors. Some of them you'll see behind me. I always keep them with me. But there's several authors, Black authors that have released books this year. And we're working on we're teaming up to do some very amazing things. I'm so super excited to release it. And then the last thing you already mentioned, in my bio, I just became the newest columnist for Palette Poetry. So I have a like sex, body, desire, and faith, and the crazy things that your grandma will tell you about sex as a kid. It's a column and a podcast. And so I'm releasing that. And then I'm going to be a workshop leader for Catapult. So lots of fun things on top of like, of course, writing for magazines on the side. But yeah, lots of really cool things happening.
And you mentioned you're looking for folks who are like, I want to be your agent, your publisher. What was the thing for folks who are like, I want to be that? What was the thing you're looking for?
I'm querying agents. So if you want to see chapters, if you want my proposal, I can definitely send that to you. But yeah, I'm querying because it's going to be good, y'all. It's going to be good. It's a Southern romance novel. Mm-hmm.
So for folks who want to, do that, or they want to buy your book, or they want to take your writing workshop, or they want to read your columns, or they want to read your poetry, or they want to see your inspiring Instagram posts, where's like the central hub? Where's the one place they can go to kind of branch out from there?
Yeah. So the best thing to do is to go to my website, KhalisaRae.com, or to follow me on Twitter. People say that I'm a hoot on Twitter. So you can definitely go to KhalisaRae.com, or you can go to @KLisaRae. And of course, the spelling will be on all the advertisements for this podcast. But it's KHALISA. So yeah.
And for folks who are on the go, show notes for everything today, it's tomearl.me/KR, tomearl.me/KR. You can find all of the notes for that. Khalisa, this has been awesome. This is kind of like why I wanted to do podcasts. And I've done about 320 podcasts to date. And sometimes I'm like, it's just like pushing something uphill. This was like flying. This is exactly why I wanted to do podcasts, to have the conversations we had today. And it's all because you were willing to be open, honest, vulnerable, courageous, creative, all here with us today. So what a gift you offered us. And I want to thank you for that. So thank you from the bottom of my heart and everybody listening. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Oh, this has been amazing. This has been so amazing.
And the way we like to end, this is our closing ritual, is for you to share an invitation with those who are listening. So what would you like to invite people to do, to be, to evolve into, to consider, to think about? What's your invitation?
I think after we talked just about openness and healing, I want to invite people to put that first. That they deserve to put their healing first, to put their joy first, to put their abundance first. They deserve that. And I invite them to come out on the other side of Phoenix, rising amidst the ashes. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you once again, Khalisa, and everybody go out and get her book, all those things, share the love, share the support. Let's show up as a community and show our gratitude. And to all of those as listening, as always, we're wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you. I want to thank you for listening to this week's Deeper Listening, Re-Listening series. I don't know how many more times I can squeeze in the word listening into this sentence. I want to thank you, as I shared in the beginning, for sharing your time and energy listening to this entire episode. As I said at the beginning, I'd love to know, do you know what year this episode was recorded in? And I'd love to know what stuck out to you, what moved you, what questions do you have? And if you have any suggestions for what you'd like future topics to cover or future guests we should feature. My friends, I look forward to you joining us again next week for a new episode in our Re-Listen series. And as always, I'm wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.